If you're wondering why you've been scoring low for the GAMSAT, even though you've been putting in so much time and effort, it could be that you're treating this exam more like a knowledge test than a skills test. And the GAMSAT, in order to make it more accessible and fair for people who don't come from science-based backgrounds, the exam has moved more and more towards being a skills-based exam rather than being a knowledge-based exam. So over the last 8 years or so, the GAMSAT has moved from heavily giving advantages to people who came from science-based backgrounds, who have deep knowledge in chemistry, biology, and physics. Instead, it's moving more towards, well, can this person think on their feet? Can this person use the mathematical skills, the logical reasoning skills in order to find the answer to the question? Because in many cases, especially when it comes to the science section of the GAMSAT, the section 3, the issue is that, a lot of people, they think that their knowledge is going to help them with that test, with that section. But in reality, it's just going to bring them back, because the way the test is designed, everything you need to come to the correct answer is there already in the text. And if you try and bring outside knowledge, it might even harm your ability to answer questions, because the questions don't require outside knowledge. They require very specific knowledge depending on what you've read in this question stem and depending on the skills that they're trying to test. You might find yourself constantly hitting a wall when it comes to your exam marks for the GAMSAT, and that might be because of this reason. So if you're studying by memorizing biology or chemistry, or you feel like you're hitting a wall, today I'll show you how exactly to break past that barrier and show you an approach that you can take to really boost your marks in the GAMSAT and master the skills and thought processes instead of just rote memorizing different facts. In case you're new, I'm Jit. I graduated biomedical science first class, and I've also scored relatively high on the GAMSAT myself, finishing pretty close to the top 10%. I created this video series because I don't think GAMSAT preparation should cost thousands of dollars. I think that it should be more accessible, and I don't think that the advantages that the GAMSAT has towards people who have a lot of money, who can spend money on expensive tutoring, should be just limited to those people. I feel like it should be a lot more fair. And because of that, I wanted to share, through these videos, what I did in my preparation to help me score and improve my marks, and including some people that I know and the research that I've done from people who've scored in 70 plus range for the different sections. So there'll be a series of videos, and if you want to support the channel, there's like ways that you can support it in like the description. But if there's anything you want me to kind of add to the video series, or anything that you want me to discuss, just like add it in the comments, and I'll try my best to try and make a video around it. But yeah, so we'll just kind of have like an overview of the GAMSAT and just all of those things. Just as like a quick overview, there's a few different sections to the GAMSAT. Section 1 is just the reasoning in humanities and social sciences. Section 2 is written communication. And Section 3 is reasoning in biological and physical sciences. Section 1 involves reading comprehension tests and your ability to break down the text, question and answer options. So there's 3 different parts when it comes to approaching your Section 1. Section 2 is your writing your pieces, which the most efficient way to get good marks in there would be through essays, because you can provide a structured response, you can argue a thesis, you can show the logical flow of your thoughts through the essay structure. Section 3 involves a range of science-related skills such as math reasoning, logical reasoning, and graphical analysis. So those, as like in a nutshell, are some of the skills that you have to develop in order to do well in the GAMSAT. And the reason why a lot of people treat the GAMSAT like a knowledge test is that they think that this test is very similar to the other tests they've done, or very similar to tests that they've taken in university, where it's, the more knowledge you have and the harder you study, the better you become. But with the GAMSAT, it's more so your skills. And if you study the wrong way, such as memorizing like different biological processes like the Krebs cycle and like various other stuff, it won't be as helpful. Instead, you kind of have to be able to come up with your own strategies for each section. And within each section, there's different question types. And I'll go through like, in later videos, like how to actually approach each question type and the strategies that I use to score well in those sections. And those strategies are very useful, especially if you're not someone who's like naturally gifted when it comes to these psychometric style tests, because what they're trying to do with this exam is like, they're trying to figure out like basically like your IQ, but in like different areas, like how well do you process math? How well do you process like graphs? How well do you like understand like logical like processes and like the logical flow of like thoughts, or like the logical flow of like an argument? And unless you're like really, really smart and like naturally gifted in that area, you need these strategies, and you need to have your own strategies to approaching the questions, this question stems, how to kind of eliminate answer options, and also overall your exam technique. Because there's no point spending too much time on one question if you can get an easier question right, like later on, or some other area of the exam. So there's a lot to think about when it comes to this exam. It's a good thing and a bad thing because it's a good thing because you don't have to, come from a science background to do good in the science section, or even come from an English background to do really well in the English section, as long as you have the right strategies. And for something like the science section, as long as you have really good mathematical reasoning, such as being able to rearrange a formula, you have really good graphical analysis, where you can kind of detect trends in the data and make your own conclusions. Or with logical reasoning, you can kind of like, make inferences, or you can just, make these conclusions from like what you've read. So maybe like there's like a text that you've read, there's a conversation between two characters in the text, and then you can make the conclusion that maybe this person is upset with this person, something like that. But like, it's not explicitly written, it's implied instead. So there's little things like that that you have to kind of learn about to do well in this test. I want to also talk about preparation material pitfalls, because a lot of people make this mistake. If you're working with any material that's made before 2020, it's probably not going to be as effective at emulating what the exam is like, because like I said, the exam is now more so skills based. It's not more so knowledge based. Even if you look at the old ASA papers as well, or even the old like Des O'Neill stuff, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be that similar to what the test is now. Back then it was amazing because like that's kind of how the test was, whereas now those kind of resources are more outdated, and you want to find questions that are made more recently and that reflect skills-based testing rather than knowledge-based testing. I also want to go over some common like mistakes and other misconceptions, memorizing versus understanding. So you don't want to just memorize like different things. Like you want to actually understand the processes that work there and be able to apply them in this case. So just memorizing content, like I mentioned before, rather than understanding it, rather than being able to apply it to something, is one mistake. Another mistake is ignoring prepping for sections that you don't like or you're weaker in. So I was like this for section 2. I didn't like section 2 when I first started like actually learning it. Section 2 is a section where you write essays or you kind of write something. And I didn't like writing. I come from a science background. I was mainly growing up very good at maths, very good at science. And I really didn't like English. I really didn't like high school English. But then like I had to, kind of turn my preparation more so towards that area, because that was my weakest section when I first started. And then as you get better, you actually start to enjoy it. And as long as you have like a good structure, and then you have like ways to kind of get your essays marked, maybe by I guess the Reddit GAMSAT pages, or by the Facebook groups that you can have where people who did well in the GAMSAT are there, and then they just like offer you advice and feedback on their essays, and they post the essays for people to mark on there. That can be like a good way to improve in that area. You want to spend like enough time in each section, because like you don't want to do really good in like maybe like one section and then have your other two sections really bring you down, because with the GAMSAT you have to be good at all the sections. Like unless you're like exceptionally good, you're getting 100 in one section, being weak in one of the sections is going to bring your GAMSAT mark down. So you shouldn't rely on your mark being carried by like one particular section. So try and evenly distribute your time. Try and like give more time for section 1, section 2, section 3, like as equally as possible. If there's a weaker section that you're weaker in and that you don't like, just do that. Trust me, just do that for like, I don't know, like the first like few weeks of your preparation, if you have that much time, or just like your first bulk of your preparation should be focused on your weaker area, and then afterwards like you can make sure that every one of your areas are fine. I also want to go over some like common like GAMSAT questions that like people have around preparation, just like frequently asked questions that people want to know about. So the first question is like, do I need to address all the quotes in section 2? No. And I'll go through like all this section 2 like stuff. Like I'll pretend that you know nothing about the GAMSAT, and I'll teach you from the start over the next few videos. But section 2 is a writing section, and you would be given 4 questions. So you'd be given 4 quotes, and you'd be asked to like write an essay based on those quotes. You don't have to focus on all of the quotes. You don't have to address all of the quotes. Instead, the quotes are designed around a central theme. And in order to do well on the GAMSAT, you need to focus on identifying that theme and then writing an essay, which maybe, uses that theme to develop an idea. And that idea being, just showing off that, you're able to kind of think critically. Like you develop an idea, you create a thesis, and then you incorporate maybe one of those quotes, or maybe 2 of those quotes, or maybe the overarching theme, and then you just write an essay based off of that. Instead of like trying to address all the quotes, your idea that you come up with should be very clear. So for example, let's say the idea was around like justice. Like maybe, let's say that's a central theme is justice. So one of the kind of theses you can come up with is you can talk about the injustices that were faced by Indigenous Australians, and then talk about that in your essay. Or if it's about technology, you can talk about the effect of technology like AI on like the healthcare system. Like that's kind of the kind of take you want to, like that's the strategy you want to take when it comes to this. Then the next question is like, can I memorize an essay and adapt it to different prompts? You shouldn't try and memorize essays to like try and like to answer the writing section, because the markers are, they're just trained to see memorized essays and pre-prepared essays. So if you go in and do that, they're gonna hate you. They're gonna give you a low mark because they can tell you're not really thinking on the spot and you just like came in with a pre-prepared essay, and they're gonna give you a low mark for that. Even if it's good, like it's kind of hard to do that. You kind of have to have like, instead you have to have a structure and you have to be able to think on your feet. But with practice, that can be like relatively easily done. If you're wondering how long your GAMSAT essay should have to be, there's no strict word count to adhere to, but try to aim to write an essay about 500 to 600 words per essay, and try and ensure that your essays are well structured and that they're clear and they don't use overly verbose language. Like you don't have to talk about like, I don't know, you don't have to use like very complicated like language in your essays. You can, speak simply and just express your ideas, use examples, have clear explanations, and use a logical flow to your explanations and analysis, and you'll do well. And even if you didn't do well in high school English, you can still do well in the GAMSAT's written section. You also have to kind of think about the fact that some of the people that sit the GAMSAT, English isn't even their second language, and they can do relatively good in this section. The next question I wanted to address is it possible to improve my GAMSAT score significantly in a short period of time? And I want to say yes, but with like an asterisk. Yes, if you're able to put in like focused effort during this time, as long as you use quality practice questions, you get feedback, you really put in a ton of time, that's the only way you can improve your GAMSAT in a short time period. And in addition to that, being able to actually have a refined strategy to approach the different sections and the different questions within the sections, and just being able to implement that, like each time you do the practice questions or each time you practice like a mini GAMSAT test, or like when you actually do the actual test, like that's how you would do well. Like you just have to have good strategies, have quality practice questions, and like seek feedback. If you want a more comprehensive set of notes covering the exact strategies that top scorers use for section 1, section 2, and section 3, plus bonus materials, then you should just click on the second link in the description. So everything like that you guys like, I guess, pay towards the channel goes directly towards supporting the channel, and it helps me to create high quality videos where people who couldn't afford to pay or couldn't afford these really expensive tutoring or preparation courses for the GAMSAT, they can still benefit from these videos. Not just the GAMSAT, but also the CASPER exams too, because I know that a lot of the people that subscribe to me, they subscribe because of the CASPER videos. Also, I'm launching an affordable course based on the strategies I'll be teaching in the next few videos. If you're interested, you can fill in the Google form on the third link in the description, and you'll be one of the first people to know when the course goes live. You can include what you'd like the course to include, what price you'd like it to have. So I'm just asking around. I haven't made anything yet. I just want to make something that would benefit as many people as possible in their preparation for the GAMSAT. And I understand that it's a very stressful time. It's a very difficult exam. I think somebody that I spoke to recently said it's one of the hardest tests in the world, and it kind of makes sense. Like it's difficult to study for. It's difficult to do and to score well, and especially if you from Australia and certain countries like where there's not that many medical schools, it's very difficult to get in, and you have to score like relatively high. And I don't think that should be just limited towards people who have like tons of money to spend on expensive tutoring. I think that more people should be able to afford to like get into medical school, because the medical system just needs more doctors who care about their patients rather than people who just have like a ton of money and come from rich families. So if you enjoyed the video, just know that there's a few more coming on the strategies and the question breakdown.